Hail, traveller, hail and hearty. It is I, Baron von Breadknife, and I offer you a quest, a deadly quest full of tricks and traps and horror. Your adventure is to watch a video about politics and video games at the same time. So let us now talk about Dark Souls and class struggle, because you know you like it. Once upon a time, 1,000 years ago, I said The Division 2, a game about terrorism, weaponized capitalism and the role of government, a game that makes an argument in favour of private gun ownership within its first 5 minutes, was political. I was told I was wrong to read politics in a Tom Clancy game, that my doing so was me forcing my own left-wing views into a game by suggesting the game had any views at all. The truth is, however, politics can be found in most things, even when they're not overt. If you do a bit of digging, even the most simple artistic work often has something of meaning to say. And that something, even when the artist claims otherwise, is more often than not rooted in politics. How we view the world, how we interact with it, what we believe and how we think society should work naturally informs the things we create as people. So it shouldn't really come as a shock when I suggest this, but Dark Souls is political. Dark Souls is a game that squirrels much of its narrative away in lore. Item descriptions provide reference material, clues, and shreds of stories about the history of Lordran, a now dead and decaying realm prophesied to be the site of a pilgrimage by the chosen undead, the chosen one in this case being you, the player. Unlike most games that rely on lore to tell their story, Dark Souls doesn't come off as flimsy and indecisive in its narrative due to the environment of Lordran contextualizing almost everything with its broken battlements and abandoned streets. The lore serves to build a history for the existing story, and despite how vague some of it is, Dark Souls' backstory is consistent and clear enough that it can be pieced together satisfyingly by its audience. There's still plenty of conjecture and debate over the true meaning of many aspects of the Souls series, but there's a lot that's been more or less agreed upon. Dark Souls and the entire Souls series is concerned primarily by cycles. Death and rebirth, the rise and fall of civilizations, the concept of a world that repeats itself, populated by those who haven't learned from history's mistakes. Lordran is dying because the Age of Fire is coming to a close.
In the Age of Ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons.
We're told how the world began and given our first taste of a cycle in the opening cutscene. Before the Age of Fire, the world was ruled by dragons in a period known as the Age of Ancients. But one among the underclass, scrabbling and scraping in the shadow of the dragons, a figure history would remember as Gwyn, found the power to claim dominion for himself and aligned with other powerful entities to pretty much wipe the dragons off the face of the planet, thus replacing the Age of Ancients with the Age of Fire. The Age of Fire was not ruled by humans, but by de facto gods. Gwyn and his allies tower above the player character in-game. Their powerful souls allowed them to manipulate light, control the dead, perform world-altering magic. It allowed them to create huge, beautiful cities. The Age of Fire was prosperous. Lowly human peasantry knew its place. Gwyn and his family ruled from their seat of Anor Londo, and everything was peachy. But Gwyn should have read Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The empire long divided must unite, long united must divide, thus it has ever been. So wrote Luo Guanzhong. The world revolves. It doesn't stay still. You can unite a kingdom, but you can't fight its division. The Age of Fire wasn't meant to last forever, but Gwyn just couldn't let go. He wanted to cling to his way of thinking, his view of the world as it should be, and he believed in his view of the world so strongly that he sacrificed himself to do it. When it was his age's turn to die, he prolonged it by linking the fire, fueling the first flame of his age with his own soul in a manner implied to be horrific. How could it not be? You're burning your soul over the course of lifetimes, all to keep the fire that sparked your age fueled. And as it turns out, that's your job to take over. You, a human being, not a lord, not a relative of Gwyn's, not a de facto god, but a glorified minion of the gods. Fed a line about prophecies and subsequently expected to die over and over and over again in a bid to ring a couple bells, seize the Lord's souls, and link the first flame to burn yourself for an eon and keep the Age of Fire going, since Gwyn, like the first flame itself, is finally threatening to die. You're given the task by Kingseeker Frampt, who looks like this, and it's at his urging that you set out to prolong the Age of Fire.
Chosen undead, your fate is to succeed the great Lord Gwyn, so that you may link the fire, cast away the dark, and undo the curse of the undead. To this end, you must visit Anor Londo and acquire the Lord Vessel.
It's not a pleasant job, it's not a painless job, and you're doing it for, well, certainly not for yourself, but for rulers who you don't know and don't really owe anything to. All because you've been given the fancy title of Chosen Undead, among many, many others who have been given the same title, I might add. But late in the game, Dark Souls offers a curveball, a choice, a chance to divide the Empire rather than unify it. This choice to disrupt the cycle is one I always make, and I do so because of, well, personal political beliefs. This is because Dark Souls, oh god, is political.
However, Lord Gwyn trembled at the dark, clinging to his Age of Fire and in dire fear of humans, and the Dark Lord who would one day be born amongst them. Lord Gwyn resisted the course of nature by sacrificing himself to link the fire and commanding his children to shepherd the humans. Gwyn has blurred your past to prevent the birth of the Dark Lord.
If you do certain things in the right order, you may find yourself face to Gormless face with Kingseeker Frampt's opposite, Darkstalker Cath, who looks like this, and argues the Age of Fire was supposed to end, but Gwyn's actions unnaturally kept it going long after its sell-by date. Long ago, the world was supposed to get the Age of Dark, a time without fire, heavily suggested to go by another name, the Age of Man. Essentially, your age, your time of dominion. If Cath is correct, you're less than a minion, you're a puppet, strung along with propaganda, who has been swindled into undermining your own kind. Whether Cath is speaking true or false, Dark Souls explores the idea of perpetuating cycles to keep a status quo upheld while the ruling class cling to their stale thrones. A ruling class that has convinced those lower on the social rungs to vote against their own interests and believe things that actively keep them under the elite's boot heels. In this light, Kingseeker Frampt is little more than a propagandist, a fantasy Goebbels for an upper class that will gladly sacrifice others to keep their old, dying, miserable world staggering along just a little bit longer, clinging to their past glories at the expense of everyone else.
Ha ha ha! Estes! 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 It's bestest!
From politicians who exploit traditional family values to control the agency women have over their own bodies, to corporations litigating and constraining competition rather than innovating to maintain market dominance, Dark Souls' theme of upholding a status quo through deception, propaganda, and good old-fashioned force is reflected in hundreds of real-world problems. One could even extrapolate further and suggest Dark Souls examines the relative merits of centrism, of sticking in the middle and just keeping the old systems going because better the devil you know, if you want it. All of this is ultimately subjective after all. The Old Lord should have been dead and buried long before your chosen undead enters Lordran. The results of their desperate clinging on are found all over the world. Lordran is on the brink of death, and those lords who remain are shadows of their former selves, weak both physically and mentally to the point where killing them almost looks like a mercy. Their desperation to keep that status quo going, their complete fear of change and of being replaced as they once replaced the dragons, has caused them to not only hurt the world at large, but to hurt themselves. They would rather have a miserable, inhospitable, decayed Age of Fire than none at all. They would rather have a dying world than a world in which they do not rule. Something climate change. But whatever they're scrabbling for, their regime has ultimately failed. When the player reaches Anor Londo, they are greeted by Dark Souls' most beautiful and inspiring sight, a grand city of white stone and marble bathing in rays of warm sunlight through a sky full of clouds that do little to hamper the illumination. Everything here is ornate and golden, even the bosses of the area, Ornstein and Smorg, it's Smorg, not Smaug, it's Smorg, are presented at the height of their power, emotive and energized, a far cry from the old, rotten, past their prime shadows you've encountered before. It's here you meet the legendarily beautiful Guinevere, Princess of Sunlight, who provides crucial guidance on your quest.
Since the day Father his form did obscureth, I have awaited thee, once living, now undead, and a fitting heir to Father Gwyn thou art. O chosen undead, and beseech thee, succeed Lord Gwyn, and inheriteth the fire of our world. A grave and arduous test of metal, yea, it shall be. Indeed, we had felt the warmth of fire, its radiance and the life it sustaineth. Without fire, all shall be a frigid and frightful dark.
It's an overwhelmingly celestial place, the epitome of the Age of Fire's grandeur, the ideal reflection of everything Gwyn sacrificed himself for. It's also a fucking lie. Should you find and defeat Dark Sun Gwyndolin, the last-born child of Gwyn, you learn that the beauty and light of Anor Londo is nothing more than an illusion. With Gwyndolin's illusion killed off, you see Anor Londo as it really is, and it sucks. Even Guinevere is fake, a projection of Gwyndolins to manipulate the undead into doing his bidding. Anor Londo is the Brexit bus. It's a pretty little lie designed to get people to willingly oppress themselves. With the illusion gone, you see no light, no glitter, no glory. You see that the very seat of the gods has become the one single thing the gods feared most. Anor Londo is dark. What they fear is already here. It's already claimed them. Linking the first flame isn't just prolonging the inevitable, it's masking the fact that the inevitable has already happened. You can't fight progress. You can flail, you can scream, you can do everything in your power to delay it, but progress, whether for good or ill, marches inexorably toward us all. None of this is to say the Age of Dark is a guaranteed success. Its very name is sinister and foreboding, but that does lead one to wonder who called it the Age of Dark in the first place, especially if it's supposed to be the Age of Man. Just a bit of negative political spin? Perhaps. But change is scary. The status quo, even a miserable one, is at least coldly comforting. We as people settle into routines and we don't like disruption. We cling to a constitution to tell us what to do, and many among us are afraid to make amendments to that constitution to keep it suitable for a world that exists hundreds of years after it was written. Many people draw their morality from a book written over 2,000 years ago and have used the teachings of this ancient and bewildered age to inform modern medical decisions and government policy. Humans love tradition. They love doing something because it's worked just fine for them up until now. The thought of abandoning their current age, even if it's an age with people's boot heels on their necks, is terrifying because it's unknown. But progress comes for us all, both for good and for bad. The irony of change is that it is itself an immutable cycle. This is represented in Dark Souls 3 by having the Ages of Fire and Dark trade places until the end of the world, as two old regimes now battle for dominance and give nothing else a chance to grow. The Empire long divided must unite, long united must divide, thus it has ever been. Change has to happen, and that's something that doesn't, well, change. Dark Souls 3 has its own politics and themes, ones that may very well support their own video, as it brings the concept of a cycle into a broader focus and offers yet more ways to disrupt the turn of the world. Similarly, Dark Souls 2 is different enough that while cycles are still important, there's a lot more we could unpack, and I'm already getting away from my main point of interest here. Ultimately though, every game examines regime changes, the merit or futility of fighting for change, and if the world's worth fighting for if it's just gonna get buggered up again. One thing I know for sure, the Age of Fire was meant to be snuffed out. It served nobody by the time Dark Souls takes place, not even the gods trying to keep it going, those decrepit old monsters who are better off dead. They're not even good people. Gwyn and his family are self-entitled liars. Gravelord Nito spent the Age of Fire sleeping while sending pawns out to spread death in his name. The Witch of Izalith attempted to prolong the Age of Fire herself, and in her arrogance screwed up so badly, she turned into Akira Butt Trees. Seath the Scaleless, let's not forget, oversaw the extermination of his own dragon species because he was jealous of the fact their scales let them live forever while he was going to die. He lost his mind trying to research a way to emulate that immortality, becoming by himself a cautionary tale of attempting to hold off the inevitable, to refuse to abdicate the world so others can take your place and flourish outside of your shadow. Kind of like a baby boomer, really. Seath is a baby boomer. He laughs at memes about millennials eating avocado. I was inspired to make this video because someone in the wake of that Division 2 uproar made a joke about me finding potential political meaning in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I responded by laying out my view of Dark Souls' own inherent political messages, and was surprised by the number of people saying they never thought of it the way I did. To me, Dark Souls was always about upholding a status quo on behalf of an elite class that uses manipulation and propaganda to keep an underclass held down. To others, it's not about that at all. And I'm not right just because my personal meaning is different to yours. In fact, everything I just said about Dark Souls was total bollocks.
It's a little more fleet of foot than you think he would be. And I think you just challenged both men to a duel.
And that's the ultimate point. Everything I just said is complete horseshit spun from my own personal principles. This is not to say I don't believe it. To me, Dark Souls is about what I said it's about. You are free to call that takeaway complete bollocks. Dark Souls director Hidetaka Miyazaki could well watch this video. I mean, he won't watch it, but he could watch it and say, "Nah, mate, that's all bollocks." And is that not the glorious thing about art? We all take personal meaning from it, and just like the politics of a game's creator will invariably have some influence on the game's creation, so too will the politics of a game's player influence how they perceive it. To me, the Age of Fire is a bad ending. Fuck the elite. To others, they may see a return to a tried and tested glory age as a good thing, where everyone knew their place and the gods were gods for a reason. They'd be talking total bollocks, but that is their bollocks to talk, just as mine are mine. Let's face it though, I am objectively correct. Fuck the elite.
Well met, adventurer! You have completed your quest. You have watched a video about video games and politics at the same time. You must be brave. You must be bold. You must be a worthy hero to have accomplished such a feat. This helmet sucks. It is rusted from when we poured Sunny D all over it, and it's sharp and sweaty inside, and I can smell old Sunny D because we did a fucking terrible job of cleaning it. I'm Baron von Breadknife, and I don't know where I'm going with any of this. Thank God for me, adventurer. Thank God for Baron von Breadknife. What the fuck am I doing?